I'm going to share with you the rules that made me so rich that I eventually questioned the meaning of making money itself, because these principles are what allowed me to go from a broke 22-year-old to a multimillionaire. And some of them I discovered through my own experience over a 26-year career as an entrepreneur, while others came directly from conversations with some of the highest net worth individuals you already know. So, without any further explanation, these are the 14 rules of money. The first rule might sound obvious, but it's the foundation of everything, and that rule is to spend less than you make. Dave Ramsey likes to say, "Act your wage." And I've always loved that idea because it perfectly captures the truth that it's not your salary that makes you wealthy. It's your spending habits and your ability to live proportionally to what you earn. My dad used to say, "It's not what you make that makes you rich, it's what you keep." And for a long time, I completely ignored that advice. When I first started making money, I was an absolutely horrible spender. I didn't believe I would ever be wealthy, so when money finally started coming in, my mindset was pure carpe diem, pure YOLO. I remember being 21 years old and receiving a check for almost $20,000 for a single month of consulting work, and when that money hit my bank account all at once, I immediately felt like it was meant to be spent. My little brother Mo came to visit around Christmas, and I told him we should go on a ski trip. And over a 10-day period, I ended up spending $133,000 on snowboarding gear, luxury hotels, drinks for friends, and eating like a king. It was one of the most ridiculous weeks of my life, because in that moment, it felt like everything was possible, and money had no limits. At the end of it all, I called my dad, and he asked me a simple question that changed my life forever. He said, "Did you put any money aside for taxes?" And I said no, which was the day I was introduced to my accountant, Norm. Norm suggested something that felt restrictive at the time, but ended up becoming the seed money for everything that followed. He asked me how much I actually needed to live, and I told him my expenses were covered, so we agreed on a $60,000 annual salary, with everything else automatically saved. That single decision allowed me to reinvest in myself, reinvest in my business, and eventually build the company that made me a multimillionaire. At the beginning, the most important thing you can do is live off as little as possible while aggressively reinvesting in your future. Most people follow the 50-30-20 rule, where 50% goes to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings. But the real goal is to keep your total living and consumption costs as low as possible so you can consistently build capital. That brings us to the second rule, which is to pay yourself first. And this is where a lot of people struggle because they feel like everyone else needs to be taken care of before they can take care of themselves. What most people don't realize is that the most important asset in their life isn't their house, their car, or their investments. It's them. Back in 2009, my business partner Ethan and I had just raised $1 million from top investors in San Francisco, and we ran into a serious issue with our product. I asked him to meet me at the office to solve it, and he told me he couldn't because he needed to do laundry. On the way to the office, there were multiple wash and fold laundromats that would have done it for $35, but he couldn't afford that expense because he wasn't paying himself enough. That moment made something very clear to me. When you don't pay yourself properly, you can't buy back your time. And when you can't buy back your time, you can't focus on solving high-level problems. Most people stay broke because they constantly trade time for money. But the real path forward is to invest time into learning valuable skills, use those skills to earn more, and then use money to buy time so you can continue investing in yourself. I like to spend money to save time, because once I have that time back, I can reinvest it into learning, growing, and increasing my value in the marketplace. This idea showed up again when I was coaching a client named Brad, who had built an incredible company but was completely burned out. He was considering selling the business, and instead I suggested that he simply start paying himself more so he could buy back time and energy. For just a few $1,000s a month, he was able to hire help, improve his health, spend time with his family, and regain the energy needed to grow the business even further. That decision ended up being worth millions, because when you invest in yourself, you force yourself to become more resourceful everywhere else. The third rule is to assign your priorities, because while you can do anything in life, you cannot do everything at the same time. People often look at my career and think I've done a lot of different things, but over the last 25 years, I've only focused on one industry, and that's software. I started as a programmer, moved into consulting, built companies, and eventually began deploying capital. but every step was built on the same foundation. The mistake most people make when trying to build their first million is diversifying too early and getting distracted instead of becoming world-class at one thing. When you focus long enough, you become what I call the tip of the spear, meaning best in class. And once you reach that level, you unlock what one of my mentors describes as the 4 levels of luck. First, there's dumb luck, which is random chance. Then there's grit luck, which comes from showing up consistently, followed by skill luck, where opportunities find you because you're known for something specific. And finally, there's other people's luck, where high-level opportunities are brought to you because others want to partner with you. The key is to stick to your unfair advantage and make money in the area where you already have momentum, while treating new interests as hobbies instead of income streams. The 4th rule is to always have a ripcord budget, which means planning not just for success, but also for worst-case scenarios. When you plan ahead, you eliminate fear because you already know how you'll respond. In business, 3 months of operating expenses is usually enough if you can move fast, and on a personal level, having 6 months of cash gives you the mental freedom to stay focused during tough times. Every economic downturn is followed by a massive upswing, and the people who win are the ones who planned for the storm in advance. The 5th rule is to give in order to get, because money is energy and it needs to move. For years, I hoarded credit card points, travel points, and even coffee rewards until I realized that hoarding was a reflection of scarcity. When you circulate money, you create opportunities, you learn faster, and you allow value to flow back to you. Saving alone won't make you rich, but investing in yourself, your team, and the market will. The 6th rule is to minimize borrowing and only use debt as leverage, not as a way to fund your lifestyle. Borrowing money to buy things that don't generate returns is how people get trapped, while borrowing strategically to increase earning potential can accelerate growth. If you can't afford something, the solution isn't debt, it's increasing your income. The 7th rule is to always analyze risk versus return and look for asymmetrical opportunities where the downside is limited, but the upside is significant. High risk with low return is a trap, while value-add investments, whether in business or real estate, create the kind of leverage that builds long-term wealth. The 8th rule is to stop fearing money, because money problems are almost always mindset problems. Many people carry subconscious beliefs that wealth is bad or corrupt, and those beliefs quietly push money away. When you change the story you tell yourself about money and start operating from abundance instead of fear, your financial reality begins to change with it. The 9th rule is to avoid lifestyle creep, because the goal isn't to look rich, it's to stay free. The longer you can live below your means, the more capital you have to reinvest, and delayed gratification is often more powerful than compound interest. Even today, I still live on a small percentage of my income because I understand that reinvesting creates options later. The 10th rule is to build a personal profit and loss statement, because your life is essentially a business. When you track income, expenses, and future projections, you gain control, and people who manage money well are always able to make more of it. The 11th rule is to remember that high tides raise all boats, because wealth is a team sport. The strongest teams are built by investing in people, understanding their goals, and creating a vision large enough for everyone to grow inside of it. The 12th rule is to understand that money is a tool, not the goal. Money buys time, freedom, and options, but fulfillment comes from creating value, building meaningful things, and spending time with people you care about. The 13th rule is that your network truly is your net worth, because the people who influence you shape your standards, your thinking, and your opportunities. Growth often requires evaluating relationships and choosing environments that pull you forward instead of holding you back. The 14th and final rule is to define your why, because dark energy like proving people wrong can push you only so far, while a clear purpose pulls you forward sustainably. My why is simple: to become the person I needed in my darkest days and to teach everything I've learned along the way. When you know what you're optimizing your life for, decisions become easier, distractions fade, and success becomes more meaningful. If you want to learn exactly how I went from broke to millionaire, click the link and I'll see you on the other side.